The only reason they told us that they want to remove subsidy is that to free up money for infrastructural development. And I ask the question, have we stopped borrowing since the removal of subsidy? As we speak today, the Nigerian government, as of today, is planning to borrow $2.2 billion from World Bank. And funny enough, what are we going to do with the money? We are going to use the money, they claim they are going to use the money to fund education, health, and other aspects of infrastructure. Now, don't also forget that sometimes January this year, the the Nigerian Minister of Finance, Wale Edu, appeared before the National Assembly and pleaded for a closed door session when the National Assembly people asked him to explain issues around subsidy, investments, and debt servicing. What this tells you clearly, that the problem is not even about subsidy removal. The major problem is public accountability. I have not seen any country in the world that has moved its people out of poverty using new liberal policies. As a matter of fact, Chile is one country that has produced the highest poverty and inequality in the whole of Latin America when it embraced new liberal policies. So I do not understand why we think that the best we can do is to embrace new liberal policy. Take for instance, China did not just embrace new liberal policy. What China did was to commit huge investments into infrastructural deficit. A country like Nigeria under the Tinubu administration that prioritizes distribution of rice and noodles over infrastructural development is not a country that should be taken serious. It's not a country that will be taken serious. And I think that the idea of neoliberal model is not the way to go. The state must lead developmental process. The state must be at the center of growth and development. Private sectors are not known to actually steer and engineer development. Because what will happen under the Tinubu administration is that we are going to have huge amount of job lost. We are going to see huge number of unemployment. In any case, the only thing the private sector driven economy enjoys, or the only thing they prioritize, is profit making maximization and exploitation. I have not seen any country in the world that actually allows private sector to drive its economic growth, that has actually done anything reasonable. So I think that when you look at the situation in Nigeria, we keep suffering. Look at the way Nigerians are becoming miserable. Take for instance, we keep saying, okay, Tinubu has done this, and we keep thinking that Tinubu has increased minimum wage. But come to think of it, in Abuja, for instance, where I live, if you look at the situation in Koba, the situation in Buhari, the situation in Kuje, Karu, even in Dawaki and other parts of the suburb, other part of the FCT, which is not even the city center, 1 bedroom flat as of today is 1 million naira and above. If you are a civil servant that lives in a 1 million naira and 1 million naira house that you have to pay annually, what that means is that you are paying the sum of 80, about 83,000 naira every month to a minimum wage of 70,000 naira. You have not factored in your expenses. You have not factored in other expenses like transportation. You have feeding, medicals, and the rest of it. Then the question therefore becomes, how then does 70,000 naira minimum wage solve the problem in the current unimaginable inflation created as a result of neoliberal policies? So we must not begin to think that Tinubu administration is going to lift anybody out of poverty. There is no country in the world, and I beg to be quoted, and I am ready to take this conversation or this debate up with any known economist. And I feel frustrated that the African intellectuals, the economics, are still debating new liberal model. I think we should be talking about developmental economics. I have not seen any country in the whole of African continent that have been able to say, yes, IMF and World Bank economic policies, neoliberal policies of privatization, deregulation, and commercialization. I have not seen any country that has come out to say we have followed this policy and this is how it has helped in developing our country. No, I think for goodness sake, the Nigerian state must realize that the only reason a state exists, the reason a country exists is to do business, because citizens have surrendered their sovereignty because to an individual, so that the individuals should manage state resources for public good. It's not the responsibility of state is to manage public resources. So when they come to tell you state has no business in this business, that is the highest level of intellectual fraud. We shouldn't be having this kind of conversation, because the only reason state exists is to manage public resources. So I don't understand where we get this idea that state should not has no business in business. In short, the state exists to regulate. The state exists to foresee development. The Nigerian state must sit at the center of economic development. That's what it should be. So I don't understand why we should all begin to support policies that we are seeing that is bringing the state to its destruction, because we are not likely going to survive this kind of pure new liberal policies. It's only going to destroy us. Look. What has changed since the removal of subsidy? What has changed? Have we made more money? Have we stopped borrowing? What has changed? I think the only thing that has changed is that the state governors are taking more money from the federal. Their capacity to waste public resources has also increased because they get more money. So why don't you plug in money for subsidy into state policies that will help to engineer the state economy and turn Nigerian state to a competitive economy? So I think that's what we should be thinking about, rather than begin to think that it's all about tax this person, do this thing. I think that's not how we should be thinking. Those who think for states, those who think for the country, must realize that this idea of outsourcing governance into the hands of private sector is not going to help anybody. It's only going to create miserable citizens. It's only going to create poverty. It's only going to create inequality. Let's see countries that have done what we are doing, where they ended. Go and study what happened in Chile. Go and study other countries that did not embrace neoliberal model. And if you think that we have seen good examples of state-led corporation that are very, very effective. Aramco oil is there. It's grown by Saudi. They still manage it, because you cannot use private sector arrangement or private sector initiative so you can't use it as an alternative to state failure. No, you cannot use it as an alternative to state failure because the state must do what it ought to do. That's what it is. That's what it is, and that's what it should be. We need to understand that private sector driven economy is detrimental to any, and that's why other countries that have developed didn't leave the development in the hands of private sector. The state came in as a stabilizer. The state must lead development process. The state must lead while private sector follow. That's what it is. Private sector come in with state as partners, not that you are outsourcing governance to private sector, because it's going to destroy the economy, it's going to destroy the state, and at the end of the day, we are also going to start from the scratch. And I think that we should be careful the way we pursue and implement these policies.